Yesterday, we began discussing the tactics used by these sinister groups, these criminal networks and organizations that target and stalk you as chosen ones, divine beings, those who carry those light codes or that special energy that have these dark cults and covens, your ex-lovers and family members going crazy over your energy to the extent where they will literally stalk you and follow you across state lines and hang out in their vehicles and hide outside of your home, apartment, motel, or facilities or places of businesses in order to attempt to stay connected to you all. And those of you who are not so-called chosen or, star seeds or divine beings that are targeted or considered TIs for short, targeted individuals because of the knowledge you might hold, the secrets you might hold, the information you might hold as far as your clearance level in the, departments you work for, the tactics that we are discussing and beginning, we're going to continue to discuss and share this information so everyone is made aware who are not aware of the many different underhanded tactics that are in plain sight amongst, those of you who are targeted. And if you haven't, that's wonderful. But I advise you to prepare yourself, especially if you consider yourself tapped in and a divine being, because if you're part of the collective, what happens to one eventually is going to end up happening to all. Not because we wish that on anybody, right? But it's just a matter, basic math here. And amongst other things I could mention. But let's get to these tactics. Yesterday I mentioned how they pocket watch at the grocery store. I mentioned abnormalities with traffic, rush hour traffic, wee hours in the morning, where we know that never used to really exist, especially if there's no construction zone or anything going on. And these groups ascend around a targeted or a chosen divine being. The other tactics they use is if you're in a public restroom, or if you are out and about and you happen to go into a restroom, and I mentioned this yesterday, they use harmful frequencies. They'll walk back and forth, one person after the other, have their phones or devices set to particular frequencies to attempt to block or maim your third eye or your crown chakra. That's one of the reasons. The other tactics they use is they hang out in the stall close by or in the restroom close by or at the sink, and they just stand there and they'll eavesdrop and ear hustle, trying to hear what it is you're doing or saying, if you're praying, if you're meditating, if you're communicating with the divine, or just hang out in general, right? And if they're not ear hustling, like, or eavesdropping, again, it reverts back to them hanging out in close proximity in order to, utilize frequency or energy manipulation. Okay. So that's important to know. Another tactics they use is a lot of spell work, a lot of witchcraft. These people, these cults and covens are tuned in with low vibrational energies and entities. So they do a lot of manipulation over and spell work over court cases. They influence judges to change their decision, or they do energetic manipulation to have these energies and spirits make the judge sick or the prosecutor sick, or call out for that day, or get caught up under a binding spell, have a court clerk lose or misplace paperwork, or influence them to be able to take a bribe. Other tactics they use is sexual bribes, monetary bribes. These groups, these sinister organizations, criminal networks, they utilize, make no mistake about it, especially if justice is playing out or has the potential to play out, they will send in their people to gaslight and love bomb court clerks, prosecutors, DAs, magistrates, and judges, just like they do you, chosen and divine beings. And they'll have these people sleep with these people or accept sexual bribery. Why you think a lot of these court cases, a lot of these criminal cases are prolonged or take forever, or is dragging their feet, or seemingly no progress? In a lot of cases, it's because these detectives and corrupt law enforcement are, accepting sexual bribes or bribery favors, however you want to word it, right? Or even monetary favors. These people are blackmailing people, right? Vice versa. It could be the corrupt law enforcement blackmailing individuals that's a part of these sinister groups, criminal organizations, or it could be those who are part of these sinister groups and organizations that are blackmailing and holding something over corrupt law enforcement. But in many cases, with these sinister groups, as we're beginning to see, that they are comprised and exist of corrupt law enforcement. Many members are part of these sinister groups. Unfortunately, have a whole, membership of corrupt law enforcement. So this is another tactics they use why justice is prolonged or seemingly there's no momentum over a particular case, because they are utilizing the tactic of, love bombing, gaslighting, sexual bribery, sexual favors, monetary favors, etc., to turn a blind eye or to unlawfully change documentation or withhold documentation, withhold court decisions, etc. That's another tactic that's being used. Other tactics that are used, we mentioned, them coming in the bathroom, hanging out in the stall, ear hustling, eavesdropping. We mentioned the pocket watching at the grocery store, them hanging out over your shoulder and watching what you spend. Um, you know, and we also mentioned the sexual bribe and favors, along with the spell work that is used over court cases to influence judges and magistrates, or to have a court case, have these dark entities mess up the court case or influence the court case to some degree. Lost paperwork, loss of memory, mental fog, manipulation and changes one decisions, turning a blind eye, paperwork going missing, paperwork that was in the file or supposed to be filed, all of a sudden it's not there, a sleight of hand with a signature, magistrates not really looking closely at signatures and things being unlawfully signed and filed and unlawfully changed. So these are tactics that they use. And so I want to begin this series, and I want to encourage all of you to begin sharing your experiences. So this way, if there's anything that that can help somebody else, help the general population understand the days and time we're in and what's going on in our immediate environment, and how these sinister groups have come to the surface and they are exposing themselves and revealing themselves out of desperation, out of thirst, out of greed, of survival. They're trying to hold on. So they had no choice but to come from behind the veil, come from behind the curtain, come from up under that underworld, right? And it all ties into, different establishments and entertainment industries and etc. And so a lot of what we thought was conspiracy theories, so they try to make you believe, you was a conspiracy theorist, or make you believe you was crazy for speaking the truth and speaking on certain subject matter. We now see that everything is coming to the light. So I encourage everybody, if you have any knowledge or experience on this subject matter, the tactics that's being used in plain sight for those who are unaware, please begin to share, as I am going to continue. This is part 2, and we're going to keep it going.